So for this session, it's really about capturing the whole value chain. And I think stemming from what Rahul said, it's really a Team Canada approach. How can we, each and all of all our individual roles in all our different industries, from government, from defense, the civilian side, from commercial and industry to academia and students and not-for-profits, how can we really capture the whole value chain and derive the economic and industrial benefits of sovereign launch for Canada? So I'm pleased to bring onto stage, we've got Natasha Gagnon, the CEO of the Ontario Aerospace Council. We've got Trevin Stratton, the America's Economic Advisory Leader and Partner at Deloitte, and Jared Ball, the Global Practice Leader of Space at Aon Insurance. So please help me welcome these three distinguished guests to the stage. So just quick intros here. So Trevin Stratton is the, again, like I mentioned, America's Economic Advisory Leader at Deloitte and a partner based in Ottawa. He currently also serves as the Vice Chair of Business at the OECD Economic Policy Committee. So prior to joining Deloitte, he was the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Policy at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Natasha Gagnon is the CEO of the OAC. She has also been appointed to the Ontario Advanced Manufacturing Council, tasked with providing recommendations to the Ontario government. Prior to joining the OAC, Natasha held key positions as a trade officer with the UK Trade and Investment and positions in the private sector in Canada and France. Jared is a global practice leader of space at Aon with 17 years of experience helping launch companies, big and small, to place their launch insurance, including the early days of SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Astra, and ESAR, and amongst many others. So prior to joining Aon, Jared was a satellite systems engineer in the space industry for over 10 years. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me on this panel. So, really this is about the diversity of what space launch can do for Canada. And as Jared, you're from the space industry, and of course, Natasha and Trevin, not traditionally from space, but working on adjacent industries to space. So I'd love for each one of you, starting with Trevin, to just maybe give a quick background intro on sort of your career trajectory, how it's led to here, why you're here at the Space Launch Conference.
So I'm an economist. I'm not necessarily deeply involved in the space industry, and the way that I got into it was via someone that many of you probably know, Scott Striner, who was part of our space leadership at Deloitte, who unfortunately passed away at the end of January, and I wanted to pay my respects to him as well. We've worked together on a number of different points of view on the space economy, me bringing the economic aspect, and he brings the deep space sector expertise as well. I know he would be ecstatic to see all of you today here in the room together. This is a topic that he's very passionate about. And I wanted to thank many of you who sent messages about Scott after he passed away to the firm, and I'm sure his family would too. Apart from my conversations with Scott, I am also on the Leadership Council of the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics. And so being able to commercialize some aspects of space research and development is a big part of what I do, specifically when it comes to my relationships with industry.
Great, thanks, Trevin. Natasha?
Great. I'm with the Ontario Aerospace Council. We're a not-for-profit association with about 180 aerospace manufacturers. So that's our core activity, but we have some very, very active space members as well. And we're glad to say that Nord Space is one of our newest members at the OAC. I got into aerospace in my time as a UK trade commissioner based in Montreal when Bombardier was building, and I will say it, at the time, the C-Series. And it was just an awe to see how industry could come together, select Canadian suppliers to help build the green sheet aircraft. And it was a wonderful time, and that's the reason why I am where I am today.
Great, thanks so much. And Jared?
Yeah, so I started with my eyes in the sky as well, but I wasn't initially looking up into the space. I was looking up into the atmosphere. And then late end of high school, I realized that I was a little too tall to fit into a plane that goes fast. So pivoted to aerospace engineering. I grew up in New Zealand. Unfortunately, Peter wasn't around yet, so I had to come to the States and studied masters at USC, and then entered into the space industry as a satellite system engineer for 10 years. and then been doing insurance since then. So we at Aon, we've supported a lot of Canadian companies, enabling their satellite ventures, particularly with satellite. With Telesat, we've been insuring all of their satellites to date. And we also insure a Hawkeye 360, who buy all of their satellites, 33 satellites from SFL, University of Toronto. And then also we were working with ComDev, Exact Earth. We insured all their satellites before they were sold off. So a lot of heritage here in Canada. Not the first time in Ottawa, not the first time in Ontario as well. So now I get to lead a fantastic team of 15 experts globally on the Aon Space team. So very proud of that. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much, Jared. So to dive into our discussion today, many folks, some of the folks before have already spoken about, the projections for the size of the space economy. Worldwide, the World Economic Forum projects that it will grow from 600 billion to over 2 trillion by 2040. There was a Deloitte report last year, of course, the 40 billion by 2040, of course, but that's the report was more of a potential to reach there, from 6 billion to 40 billion. It's not a guarantee, right? So now to pose the challenging question to you, right, from your unique perspectives dealing with different industry players, how can Canada capture this whole value chain and really be able to, grow at a pace that is going to outpace the rest of the world? How is, and I'll start with Trevin here, because of course, it was your Deloitte report. So where do you see the highest potential areas for growth in the Canadian space economy? And, is there potential to start drawing in participation from not traditionally space companies to also have, start having a space strategy?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I look at the space economy as an ecosystem, and that there has a multiplier effect, to use, economics terms as well. So that Deloitte report talked, specifically about the direct effect, apart from, I think we said it was 6 billion at the time, and it employs 10,000 people. There's R&D is very intensive in the space industry, and that has a lot of spin-off opportunities. But what a lot of economists also talk about is the indirect effect of sectors as well. And apart from people directly employed in the space sector, it also employs an additional 13,000 people. And that's what I like to look at when we're talking about potentially bringing in industry players from outside what we traditionally consider the space sector as well. So, I mean, just to use one example, if we're talking about satellite communication services, if we're talking about, Earth orbital data, it has applications across a number of different sectors. If we're talking about precision agriculture, how it can, tell you, where to place fertilizer or for irrigation or when to harvest crops. If we're talking about forestry, the role it plays in forestry management for logging. If we're talking about supply chains, the role it plays in determining if there are going to be bottlenecks when it comes to ports or when it comes to rail. When it comes to insurance, being able to use kind of evidence-based data for insurance as well. When it comes to border security, being able to track people going across borders, both land and sea. And obviously, I know, we've been talking a lot about security and defense today too, and obviously there are a ton of applications there as well. And so when I kind of think about it and think about how do we bring in industry players, I think about it more in this kind of broader sense too, where the space economy is more about infrastructure and about technology that cuts across sectors. And specifically when it comes to defense in all these areas, we also have a unique capability when it comes to, polar launch as well. One of the gaps that exists is our launch capabilities, and there's a lot of talk in the economy right now about sovereignty, about economic independence, and right now we rely on other countries for launch assets or to launch our assets, and so that's something that we might want to be able to rectify going forward.
Okay. Thanks so much, Trevin. That's great. And I think, to carry over to Natasha, in your role, you deal with a lot of the supply chain, right? Of course, the number of companies who are building, small like tooling to widgets to different parts and materials, to be able to have a launch industry in Canada. How do we capture the whole value chain from, the supplier side of things as well?
Well, I think we'll just be utilizing our capabilities a lot more, right? We have capabilities in all these sectors in traditional aerospace and traditional space suppliers, but we also have, growing AI, machine learning space. We have expertise in telecommunications, nuclear technology. So I really think this is the era of, like you were saying, an ecosystem. It's almost like cross-pollination. We have to learn to leverage all those established capabilities that we have for space applications, right? So nuclear capability right now is a really niche area that we could be leaders in, right, for nuclear propulsion. Another area is cybersecurity solutions for space assets. That's really, really important. So we're talking about defense and security. We have to secure those assets so that, other potential threats don't tap into them. There's enabled solution segment. So that's really tapping into all the capabilities we have in Earth observation and drawing more analytics from everything that we're doing right now. So it's really about amplifying our existing capabilities. So we're not starting from scratch here. We're really actually looking at ways to give our aerospace and space sector more opportunities to collaborate with some other industries and do bigger things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, shout out to you, Natasha, for the work that you're doing at the OAC as well to bring to surface all these great companies that are in Ontario and across Canada that can do the work that we normally would maybe ship out around the world, right? And I think with obviously the new tariffs and tariff threats, we are spending a lot more time looking at domestic suppliers, and building a launch vehicle is going to take a lot of parts. I forget what the bill of materials was. It was maybe over 10,000 parts.
And that's so well said. So just to share, one of the easy ways, instead of talking about, Buy Canada, we actually started a campaign around our members and our suppliers to share awareness on their capabilities, their certification, so that, people in the room today could actually look and say, hey, we didn't know that Deshawn actually does space for, parts for SpaceX. Like, okay, maybe we can leverage their capabilities for our projects, right? So shedding awareness about what you do, not just your products, but your certifications, your capabilities, will open the doors for actors like people that are in the room today to kind of say, hey, I could leverage what they know to accelerate what we're working on innovation-wise, right? So very important. I think as Canadians, we don't boast enough, and we have to change our mindset and kind of say, hey, and be okay. Like Rahul said, we have to say yes to being leaders in, maybe if it's just niche areas, but we have to be okay, and we have to change our mindset to say, hey, we have to take this on ourselves. So glad that we're doing this in Ontario. Glad to have you on board, Derek, with North Space. You've really ignited, I think, the opportunities for space in our province, and happy to be here to promote what we can do globally as a nation.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Natasha. So Jared, I'm gonna, we'll not talk about the supply side, but let's talk about the demand side, because obviously you have that global view. You're working with new companies, right, every month who come to you with new ideas of how they want to utilize space. And of course, they want to get insurance coverage, right? They don't want to, in case of damage third-party property, they want to be covered for that. So maybe can you give us a hint on sort of the conversations you're having, and what is sort of, are there any non-space companies sort of coming to you now with ideas on, how to use space for their business?
Yeah, well, let me start with the example of SFL UTIAS, right? So with Hawkeye 360, we have a pretty unique opportunity in that we are ensuring the operation of the satellite, not just the launch. And that's a really rare thing in the small sat community, because most of the small sats have high failure rates, CubeSats have high failure rates, whereas the SFL record is phenomenal, right, on orbit record. So I think that, that key is that I think as we're already discussing, is that Canada already has a space business, right? It has a space economy on the satellite side. And so SFL is doing it on the small sat side. MDA is now taking on the prime roles. They used to be just a payload manufacturer. Now they're taking on the prime role on the Telesat Lightspeed constellation, building buses as well. So you've kind of got that on the satellite side. So what you're missing now is on the launch side, right? So You know, the New Zealand example is quite a good one. Talking back to my experience, but is that it's Rocket Lab was a disruptor, right? And so came on disruptor, forced the government to move and then support that industry locally, and then it's gone beyond that. Now you've got Dawn Aerospace and you've got other key aerospace and other companies that are kind of following along on that, taking advantage of the government investing in recognizing that space is an industry that is good for the country, right? And so I think that's a good example for Canada to follow, how to grow the business. And you know, how do you are successful in space? Well, sometimes, you know, depending on how the investment is, whether it's public-private investment sort of structures, then insurance is an important part of that, right? So insurance is there to enable the success of these projects and sort of help manage some of these investors, whether that be government or private, you know, manage their risk on these projects, right? And so obviously, you know, your first launch is not very insurable, right? But once you get beyond that, then you know, then you have a product that you can insure, and so you know, initially you're looking at what's my availability of liability? Do I have a regulatory environment that's going to enable me to be able to secure that? And then beyond that, then that's looking internationally. It's not just about launching necessarily Canadian assets, but also foreign assets. So is your vehicle insurable? Can someone come and launch on a North Space vehicle or some other Canadian vehicle and be able to get insurance to protect that? So I think the U.S. example of more commercialization of, you know, the government looking for commercial solutions. Traditionally, the U.S. government was not insuring anything, right? So it's all taxpayer. The risk is all on the taxpayer. We're seeing that change, right? So we're seeing even on some of these defense contracts that there are contractual clawbacks being put into these contracts to push risk back onto the manufacturer or the vendor, and so those need to be insurable, right? Or you know, there's a path for those to be insurable to take the risk away from the manufacturer. So that's kind of how I think how it needs to work together, and opportunities there for you know, conversations along that line of you know, how to streamline the process so that things can be successful and grow the business.
That's great. Thanks, Jared. So maybe I'll turn it back to Trevin here for the next question. You know, for launch, we talked about the supply chain, but there's also a very large value delivery chain. We build the payload, we build the launch vehicle. Someone's got to test it. You know, someone's got to launch it, operate the spaceports. What do you think Canada is missing? What are the key missing parts to make sovereign launch capability, you know, a reality in Canada?
Yeah, I'm gonna focus on something maybe not as, or maybe a little bit boring, but I think it's procurement a lot of the time when it comes to it too, or at least having a buyer strategy that kind of aligns procurement with investment programs as well. And you know, I think that's going to be key not only for the space economy, but a lot of economies going forward when we're thinking about different industrial strategies too. Obviously, when it comes to the dual-use nature of the space economy, or when it comes to space technologies and also the security industry, I think that we have a few models for procurement from defense procurement as well. If we look at something like the National Shipbuilding Strategy, where they're able to kind of, you know, use private providers through sole source contracts and be able to kind of build a domestic supply chain in that way, I think that's very important too. And similarly, when it comes to procurement, you know, we have a point of view coming out on the space economy going forward as well. But I think it's also looking at kind of national security exceptions when it comes to procurement as well to be able to build this. And so if we're looking to kind of develop all the different parts of the value chain within Canada to have that type of sovereignty, governments play a very large role. We see a lot of this taking place specifically when it comes to security in the United States and in Europe. And it'll be important that we have that in place in Canada too.
And maybe speak a bit about for Arctic sovereignty as well. Obviously, there's a lot more discussion around, you know, NORAD modernization, meeting NATO targets, but having that dual-use nature, you know, we're not just procuring this for defense purpose. We're not stockpiling rockets for the sake of it. You know, they're going to carry civilian payloads as well, which will ultimately benefit, I think, as General Horner said this morning, it's really more about like search and rescue, for example, or remote communications, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's and that's kind of the dual use nature of it, right? It's that if we're able to align kind of our investment, I've been speaking to a lot of members of government and industry, not only over the past month, but over the past few months, particularly since tariffs have been put in place as well. And one term that I hear repeatedly, no matter who I'm talking to, is kind of economic security, and it's kind of looking at those two things merging together, right? It's that enhancing our security can help to grow our economy and creates capabilities and technologies that help with that, and vice versa too.
That's great. Thanks so much. Natasha, any thoughts on that?
I was just thinking the same thing as well, especially in firefighting right now, what we're seeing around the world, and that's one area where I think we can capture the attention of government. So we have de Havilland that's building their Canadair program, for the security or environmental security, climate change. I mean, the economic pitch is huge on the impact to our Canadian society, right? So we're a large country with a small population, so we really need these tools to secure us, to keep us safe and attract talent as well. I would like to say that the other piece is we're not great at infrastructure projects and putting massive amounts into project. We're in Ottawa. Sorry, I don't want to bring up the LRT, but public-private partnership. Great method to make these large transportation projects come to life, but we do have to make sure that there's I would say a will, like a goal. What's our goal in that at the end? But I think infrastructure, finding ways to put forward the right discourse on how to invest in this necessary infrastructure will really help us in the long term, and it will help even burgeoning subsectors like eVTOL, air taxis. All these things will capture and will benefit from those types of infrastructure investments.
Great. And Jared, you want to give some?
Yeah, just I think there's been a lot of good discussion today about what it takes as far as anchor missions, right? And so we've been working with SpaceX since they just moved to Hawthorne. So we were at Falcon 1 days, and I'm not sure how everyone's familiar with the SpaceX story, but they were one launch failure away from not making it, right? So fourth mission of the Falcon 1 was successful, and immediately they got a NASA contract, and that started the story of where they've gone from there. So I think that's an important, and also we have examples. We work with ESAR, with German launch vehicle startup entity, and they've been getting supported by the European governments as well with anchor missions. So I think that's an example to follow there.
Right. So anchor missions where companies are encouraged to obviously deliver value. It's about winning contracts, not grants, right? And really being able to have that pull demand, right?
That's great. Yeah, not just handing out money, but also okay, we have a mission we need a launch for. You guys need to get ready to launch for us, right? So here's a contract, right? That sort of thing. Yeah, I think is the way to go.
Right. And Jared, I just want to stay with you here. Maybe going back to a little what you said earlier about the insurance market. Obviously, your company, your team has had a great sort of track record working with a lot of different companies, even like you just mentioned, SpaceX Falcon 1 days. I think Rocket Lab as well. You were there on like almost day one. Astra, ABL, now ESAR, right, launching from Norway. Some of these countries did not have, like New Zealand and Norway, for example, maybe didn't have the policies set out yet. And of course, here in Canada, we don't. And we'll hear from Carrie Henry from Transport Canada as well on that progress. But in your perspective, what are the important things to consider from the insurance side of things? Because that's not something people, that's not the first thing they think about when they think about how to make launch reality. But getting regulations around, insurance and not having an insurance market could basically kill the industry.
Yeah, I think the importance is the ability to access the insurance and not have, punitive regulations. I think most countries around the world have done the right thing, and they've come up with solutions that are viable and commercially. I think on the for the third-party liability perspective. From the launch perspective, we have some of our clients are located in domiciles that have some very high premium tax rates, and that's a real challenge for them if they're paying 20% on top of what could be already chunky. If you think of a satellite project, the three main costs of the satellite project are typically the satellite cost is the most expensive, launch cost, and then insurance is your third expense. So it's a meaningful expense, and in a very hard market like we are currently in the space market, due to a large number of losses in the 23 year, then that's a very sizable spend. So I think it's it's an important conversation to have. I think we'll wait. I think Kerry's on the right path, and so we'll hear what she has got to say next. I don't see any concerns for Canada. I mean, as we've discussed, we've already insured a lot of Canadian flag satellites, so there's no issue on the launch side. There's the right structure of space being a non-regulated business, insurance line of insurance, so that works fine for Canada on that side. So.
Great, thanks, Jared. And just the last question for the panel here, as we last few minutes here. Obviously at this inaugural Canadian Space Launch Conference, we're really privileged to have folks from across government, and defense, industry, academia to share in this important thought leadership. And so, for our panel here, what do you think is like one or two key important takeaways where folks can go back to on their day jobs to really think about making a difference in either bolstering the supply chain or helping to generate those demand signals or helping to ensure that policy is aligned with what the industry's needs are and obviously what the public's needs are as well. Maybe Trevin, you want to go first?
Sure. I think governance is going to be incredibly important. We've talked about all the different moving parts when it comes to the space ecosystem, including procurement, including investment programs, including insurance, including all the different parts of the value chain. But I think what you were mentioning when it comes to what are our objectives and making sure that everything's aligned with that is incredibly important. So we think having kind of a cabinet level authority within the federal government to be able to align all these pieces when it comes to space economy, Space Council, but also when it comes to defense and security as well, and when it comes to advancing industry too, is going to be incredibly important going forward. And then secondly, I mean, the economic conversations are changing right now, not only for the space economy, but the economy more broadly. And specifically when it comes to mitigating risks involved with, supply chains or value chains involved with other countries too. I think that there's probably a window of opportunity here to advance having a sovereign space economy, because how it relates to the rest of our economy when it comes to telecom, when it comes to data, when it comes to our infrastructure, has to do with our security. And so being able to ensure that we have those sovereign capabilities is going to be important, and I think that there's an opportunity to talk about it now.
Great, thanks, Trevin. Natasha?
I think we're saying sovereign a lot. We're not implying, I don't think anyone is really implying that we're going to do this on our own. We're doing it for Canada, but we have a lot of great allies. Sweden, Portugal, New Zealand. We can tap into what one of the speakers said this morning, into our diplomatic ties with a lot of these countries to learn from them. To craft what our end goal is and how we want to impact our society. And I think, yes, now more than ever, the economic reasoning of why we should be supporting this potentially very lucrative sector, which is the space economy, to grow our national economy is the perfect timing to, I don't want to say, but pick a winning sector. This is the time, and we shouldn't shy away from doing it.
Jared?
Yeah, so I'll move to the talent side, and so I think with two sons that are studying engineering, that's a pretty big focus of mine. So I think what you guys are doing today with the conference and sponsor, you're sort of assisting, with profits going to student design, rocket design clubs or space clubs around the country is fantastic. That's really, where kids get hands-on experience, and so great to see that. And so I think that's the key in Canada, right? Is making sure that we've got pipeline. You have a pipeline of talent coming through that, and I think it's a thing about there's going to be the talent coming through, but it's encouraging them to get into the sector, right? So making sure they are aware of the opportunities that there are within the country, that they don't need to look abroad, and then providing them pipeline with starting up, these companies that are going to be, breaking through into new areas that currently aren't serviced like the launch sector. So looking forward to supporting you on your journey.
Great. Thanks so much, Jared. And that's a wrap, everybody. So please help me thank Trevin, Natasha, and Jared.